No donor money, no aid, no help, no currency, no what. You are allowed to die, languish, hang on that cross. Niger is on the cross. Burkina Faso is next. Mali is next. And anyone else who dares to challenge the French, the British, and the Americans will end up on this cross. You can't work. You can't enjoy your resources. You can't travel. You can't transact. I said one time, and many of you did not hear me, think of the crucifixion of Jesus. There's a man hanging on the cross. And I said, there's no man who hung on the cross. It is the African who is hanging on the cross, with the economic system and the political system crucifying them on the cross to make sure that they die the death of the criminal. But are they criminals? The answer is no. Zimbabwe has been on the cross for the past 23 years, hanging on the cross. We can't labor. We can't think. We can't travel. We can't transact. The Americans and the British, the Romans and the Dutch crucified Zimbabwe on this cross.
Brothers and sisters, we all know that this Saturday, Sahelian leaders are going to have first historic summit. So on that, we have this speech from Joshua MAPONGA speaking on the same point. I mean, on the same ideas what these three brothers from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are going to sit about. So let us listen this full speech, and then we know in the comment section what you think on this issue.
Crucifixion time kills you. Any country that has gone through sanctions, you die. But after your death, Saturday is a day of rest. Now that's power for me. Sabbath is a day of rest, where you stop everything you're doing. This is what China did for the past 30 years. It was a Sabbath for them. They closed their walls, closed their gates, closed everything, closed their WhatsApps, closed their Facebooks, closed their Twitters, closed their Instagrams, and they looked at themselves as the Chinese people. Who are we? What do we want? Where are we coming from? Where are we going? They did the reverse engineering on the Sabbath day, the day of rest, when everyone else thinks that you are dead and they've closed you in the tomb. They think that they're done with you and nothing good will come out of that. In the midst of that silence and darkness, you begin to work on yourself like a seed that is in the ground. You begin to work on your germination. Like a child sitting in the mother's womb, you begin to develop from fetus until embryo, until you can be delivered as a child. So China worked on the Sabbath day in her moments of silence, creating new products. Samsung, Hitachi, Suntech, Toyota, and then what and that. And came Hawaii, Huawei, and what, and in the silence of there. And man, didn't they work from yellow fleet equipment to food, to textiles, to technology, to what closed the world outside. We need tomb. Africa needs a tomb. And I'm glad they call us the dark continent. Maybe we are a dark continent. And darkness gives birth to light. And when they close you into the dark, that's where germination begins to happen. Moments of isolation, moments of segregation, moments of sanctions are not evil at all. They're just telling you, close the door to the people that are outside and focus on yourself and develop yourself to maturity. Saturday night, day of darkness, silence. And by the way, while he was in the tomb, soldiers were outside waiting. If any movement happens there, we'll kill him. I love that part there. Even in your silence, they'll be standing at the gate and watching and to see what will Africa do? What will Niger do? What will Zimbabwe do? Now they're here. We got power. We got an airport. We got our roads. We got our medicine. Now we got our food. Now we got our wheat. Now we got our platinum. Now we got our uranium. Now we got our gold. Now we got, and people, see, but we thought that we'd kill them. But you can't kill people. Life belongs to the one who gave it. Saturday, the day of silence. Thursday, the day of transactions and betrayal. Friday, the day of crucifixion and restrictions and sanctions. Saturday is a day of rest. They're done with you. If you do that, you become another Zimbabwe. If you take your land, you become another Zimbabwe. Another Zimbabwe, another Zimbabwe. And everyone's scared. We're going to become another Zimbabwe. But you forget that when you fear becoming another Zimbabwe, you are fearing control of your own economy, on your own land, and determining your own destiny. Saturday is a day of segregation, isolation, silence, quiet in your life. They have betrayed you, it's okay. They've crucified you, it's okay. Sit in your tomb. Sit in your grave. Sit in your supplica. Sit in your own space. Close the doors to rumors and expectations. And darkness is a healthy space to live in. Boom! The last day is Sunday morning. On Sunday morning, there's a voice that is heard in the sky. Your father, your pater, your Abba calls you. And as the voice comes from the spiritual realm to intercept a physical, desperate condition, life is enthused and brought back. Soldiers that are on the gate, they fall off. The man wakes up from the grave, folds up the blankets, and walks up victorious. Sunday for me is a day of a resurrection, a reaffirmation. Now that you've been betrayed, now that you've been crucified and isolated, now that you've been lying in the grave for the longest of time, Sunday morning is a time to tune up to the signals in the spiritual realm. Hear the voices from outside spaces. Let there be life within the carcass that is lying on the ground. Africa must hear that voice that says, your father calls you. Africa must wake up from the catacombs and the graves of bones and materials covering them in the grave. Africa must unfold herself from the swaddling cloths of death. Come Sunday morning and walk out of the grave victorious, powerful, fearing nothing, empowered by spirituality, a voice from heaven, energy in the physical body. Walk out through the door, and between me and you, the stone had been rolled away. I'm waiting for a day when Africa will get out of this graveyard, get out of this tomb, get out of this death state, get out of this dark continent into the marvelous light of Sunday morning, grand resurrection. So when you read the text, don't just get myopic and constrict your mind to the colonial interpretation of the resurrection of the Messiah. How about you stand with me and look at the glorious history of the African children who have been betrayed and sold, who have been crucified and limited, who have been buried and forgotten, and look at the resurrection message that says there is a great Sunday morning, morning of resurrection, when the African continent will stand up away from the colonial constructs, and we can say our father has called us and we have heard his voice, and we can walk away from colonialism, from economic deprivation, from becoming a third world country, and we can begin to participate in the space of our own dignity and life. 4 days you must deal with. How do you deal with betrayal? How do you deal with crucifixion? How do you deal with darkness and isolation? Are you ready for your own resurrection on Sunday morning? I see a grand morning for Africa. I wish the whole continent can be put on sanctions so that we can close our doors on Friday afternoon and have our Sabbath as Africans. Yes, we have been betrayed on Thursday through the colonial system. We have been crucified and etc. But Africa needs a Sabbath. Africa needs a Sabbath where you can close the tomb, close the borders, close the transactions, close the ports, close the airports, close imports and exports. Just close everything and look into yourself in your own grave and say, who are we? What are we? And what are we doing? And I hope that after that closure, for the Sabbath day on Sunday morning, we can resurrect into the newness of life. If you're within the Greenwich Meridian, to die, I almost spoke like an Australian. Today is Friday. And tomorrow morning is Saturday. And as we're closing the Sabbath, opening the Sabbath hours on a Friday afternoon, I hope you can think also economically, politically, socially, and globally, and say, as we are closing down Friday and opening the Sabbath, what is the political message of Sabbath observance? What is the social dynamics of Sabbath observance? What will Africa do on its rest and its Sabbath? And after the Sabbath, I hope I'll be seeing you again on Sunday morning. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Stay away from trouble. Don't do what I won't do, but if you do it better.